Hey, I'm Firebelly. I'm a professional software engineer and Godot engine enthusiast. In this video, I'm going to go over my principles that I personally follow for earning top ranks in game jams. I've got a track record of making games that rank highly, such as Grave Juice for Ludum Dare 47, Magic Frontier for Ludum Dare 48, Corpse Wizard for Minijam 110, and Ace of Sphinx for GMTK 2022. I also got a comment from Mark Brown, stating that Ace of Sphinx was on his shortlist for his top 20 entries. All of these games have placed in the top 2% of entries overall in their respective jams. Links to each are in the description, so you can check them out yourself. The following are my 7 principles for making top jam games. Principle 1. Game feel is a top priority. First impressions are everything in game jams. Your players are typically other jam participants coming to your game to check it out and leave a quick rating. They usually aren't going to spend a lot of time with your game. Therefore, your priority should be to create an experience that feels good to the player immediately. When I make jam games, I often set a goal to have the core mechanics done within the first 30% of the time available. Then I spend the remaining 70% of my time on polishing the game. Additionally, flaws in your game's design can often be easily masked by creating a game that plays well and feels good. For example, my GMTK Jam 2022 submission, Ace of Sphinx, had a main mechanic that I realized was somewhat lacking. Rather than change my game last minute in an attempt to fix this, I decided instead to lean heavily on the aesthetic and the juice. This earned me a ranking of 72 overall, despite the fact that I didn't push my core idea as far as I could have. Principle 2. Obvious problems need to be fixed. There's a temptation, particularly among developers, to ignore obvious problems in our games, either because there's an easy workaround or because we don't think it's that big of a deal. This is a fatal mistake. Players will notice problems more easily than they'll notice good things about your game. The player's experience should be as frictionless as possible. The controls should make sense and be familiar to a broad audience. Any and all bugs that are obvious to the player should be fixed as a priority. Information should be surfaced to the player in a way that makes them aware of exactly what's happening in the game. As a rule of thumb, if there's something about your game that annoys you, it will annoy your players even more. Players will not overlook issues in your game as easily as you do. Principle 3. Your game should be too easy. A problem that is common with jam entries is a game being too difficult. We as developers get used to playing our own games, and some of us even like more hardcore games that require dedication and skill. The problem is, you don't have a dedicated player. Your audience is players who will pop in, check out your game for 2 minutes, and then leave a rating. If anything in that 2 minutes sours their experience, your rating will take a hit. It's much better to make it nearly guaranteed that a player will finish your game without issue. This makes the player feel good, creates a relatively frictionless experience, and bolsters your rating from the player. Don't make your game too long. Do not add content because you feel your game is too short. If you have nothing new to show the player, don't make the player keep repeating the same thing over and over. A player that finishes your short game is going to have a much better experience than a player that never finishes your long game. Principle 4. Be proficient with your tools. Many people will use game jams as an opportunity to try new things. While this is a great way to learn, it's not a great way to end up top in the ratings. You want to spend your time building your game and not working through learning barriers. The more time you have to actually build, the more time you can spend pushing your game to the next level. I always use Godot and Sprite. I'm very proficient with both tools, which boosts my productivity significantly. Rarely do I encounter an issue with Godot that requires more than a couple minutes of debugging, and rarely do I deviate from what I know. If I come up with a game idea that I don't know how to implement immediately, I will often disregard it and choose the next best idea. If you don't have proficiency with any tools because you're just getting started, that's okay. Participating in a jam will still be a great experience for you, and with time, you will become proficient. Be sure to use your favorite tools outside of game jams. You should be making games in the time between jams in order to learn what you need to learn. Try not to use game jams as your only excuse to pursue this hobby. Principle 5. Use a starter template. Game jams will often allow you to use pre-existing code for your entry. Take advantage of this when it's permitted. Many games you make will have very similar elements like menus, shaders, and libraries, among other things. Put the elements you find yourself using often into an empty project that you can copy when setting up a new project. GitHub template repositories make this really easy. For example, here's my template repository for Godot projects, which includes add-ons and code that I find myself using regularly. This saves me the busy work of setting up a new project from scratch. I'm ready to start developing the moment the jam starts. In between jams, spend some time refining and adding to your starter template. Build up a library of scenes, prefabs, or whatever else you think will be useful. Any code, art, or other assets that you use routinely should be put into the starter template. If you are using an engine that has demo projects available, you can pull in elements from those as well that you think will be useful. Additionally, you can consider setting up an automated build pipeline to make building your games a breeze. Manually building your games has potential for error and also takes time. I created a GitHub action specifically for automatically building Godot games called godot-export, which you can find in the description below. Principle 6. The theme is optional. Have you ever gotten hung up on the jam's theme the minute it's revealed? Have you been unable to come up with an idea that satisfies the theme in a reasonable amount of time? Me too. This hang-up often leads to creative block and either wasted hours or a decision not to participate at all. However, I've found that the theme in most jams can be easily disregarded and your game can still rank highly. Let me be super clear. An idea that fits the theme and is executed well is the best of both worlds. If you have an idea that fits the jam's theme, definitely use that. Often though, you simply cannot think of a good idea no matter how much you think about it. When this happens, you can make a game that you want to make. Then try to shoehorn the theme into it. Don't be discouraged because you don't have the perfect idea. Take a look at my game, Grave Juice. The theme for that jam was stuck in a loop. Our quote-unquote interpretation of the theme was that the vial you're carrying would reset its position when it breaks. We also made the character get bounced around by traps so the player could get stuck, in a sense. That was a very loose take on the theme, and yet the game still placed 46 overall out of 2,400 entries. Make the game you're excited about. If it fits the theme, even better, but don't be discouraged if it doesn't fit so well. You can still make a great game that people enjoy. Principle 7. Embrace failure. Failure has a negative connotation, but it shouldn't. I love failing, and I love failing quickly. Every failure I encounter is a treasure trove of information. Failure indicates a deficiency, which in turn indicates an opportunity to improve and learn. I've been able to be consistent with my game jams precisely because I've been disappointed in the past. Take a look at Egg Hero. This was a game that I was really happy with initially, but it ended up being way too hard, and the ranking suffered because of it. I learned a lot of valuable lessons from this one, and I'm glad it failed. Always expect your game to rank lower than you want it to. Always expect that you will get critiques, even harsh ones. Never be totally satisfied with your creation. Always pick it apart and analyze what you did wrong and what could be better. You can and should be proud of submitting an entry because it is a great achievement, but you can be proud and critical of something at the same time. In fact, I personally believe that's the ideal way to view your own work. Keep in mind that a project that fails is not a reflection of you personally. The best game developers at one point in their lives made games that were boring and ugly. Failure is simply an indicator that there's opportunity to learn. Don't make the mistake of digging any deeper than that. Embrace failure. Those are the 7 principles that I personally follow when making my jam games. Your principles may differ, but I hope these ideas help you develop your game jam skills. If you agree or disagree with any idea I've presented here, let me know in the comments. See you in the next video. If you enjoyed the video, please like it and subscribe. If you want to learn how to build a 2D platformer in the Godot engine, check out my Udemy course, link in the description. If you want to support my work, you can pick up one of my games on Steam or itch.io, links in the description as well.